quick revision of the subjunctive. Usually when you are using que, that the alarm bells should ring. The subjunctive in 90% of the cases will be introduced with a que. And what are we using it for? We're using it for wishes. For example, voglio che, spero che, desidero che. We're using it for doubt and uncertainty. Dubito che, non sono sicuro che. We're using it for commands. Voglio che, pretendo che. We're using it for emotions. Temo che, ho paura che, sono felice che. We're using it for opinions. Penso che, credo che. We use it when we're hypothesizing about things. Immagino che, credo che. And for also, which I didn't mention last lesson, was to express necessity with such expressions as bisogna che, è necessario che, importante che, conviene che. However, there are two parts of a subjunctive sentence, or at least the ones we were looking at yesterday. There's the first part, and in the first part is where we express the wish, the doubt, and the emotion, and we simply use the present tense indicative for this plus que. Present tense plus que. Present tense plus que. However, what we are wishing, what we are doubting, what we are feeling and thinking is expressed in the subjunctive. So in the example, you see the first part of the sentence, temo que, we express the emotion in this case with the present tense, temo, followed by que, and then what we fear is expressed in the subjunctive studi. Also need to remember that we often specify the subject, so who, in the second part of the sentence, because io, tu, and lui, lei all look identical. Che io studi, che tu studi, che lei studi, they're identical, so we need to specify. However, you should recall writing in some letters, I can't wait to go to Italy, and you would recall non vedo l'ora di andare in Italia, even though up here I've indicated that non vedo l'ora is used with the subjunctive. So why isn't it used with the subjunctive here? It's because, as I explained the other day, it's the double person. If both verbs refer to the same person, I can't wait and I can't go to Italy, we don't use the subjunctive. We use di plus the infinitive, of course, an infinitive because any preposition requires the infinitive. And it works for all people. So, tu hai paura che tu non superi l'esame? Wrong. Hai paura di non superare l'esame. Lei è contenta che lei studia italiano? No. Lei è contenta di studiare italiano. Okay, now as you may recall, there are different tenses in the subjunctive as well. So we have present tense, we have the past tense and the imperfect tense. And the best way to construct a sentence with the subjunctive is to first translate it from the indicative. So using so que will always require the indicative. Why? Because it's certainty. You're not doubting, you're not showing any emotion. It's objective and it's a fact. So que, it's a fact. I know that. Fact. Remember, subjunctive is used for non-fact and for subjective ideas, subjective communication. Okay, so you write your sentence in the indicative with so que, and then you translate your sentence from indicative to subjunctive. So I think he hates school. First, that's what we want to say, but first we're going to write I know he hates school. So so che lui odia la scuola. We change in the so to penso, and we're changing the present tense indicative to the present tense subjunctive by looking at the table and conjugating are verb, so it will end in I. And you know this sentence very well. We've opened all our letters and emails with spero che tu stia bene, and you can go backwards and think, well, originally, if you know someone's well, so che tu stai bene, present tense, subjunctive tense. I believe she went to a party. Let's first practice with I know she went to a party. So che lei è andata alla festa. That's passato prossimo indicative. We just change it into passato prossimo subjunctive, which is very easy. We keep andata is identical, and the e changes to sia, because sia is a subjunctive form of essere. However, it also works for the imperfect tense. So I imagine that as a child, Lisa used to play soccer. Let's pretend I know that as a child Lisa used to play soccer. Used to, it's a habitual action in the past. It requires a subjunctive. So, so che da bambina Lisa giocava a calcio. And we just translate that into the subjunctive. I imagine. Immagino che da bambina Lisa. We just look up the subjunctive of the imperfect subjunctive, and we'll find that it's giocasse a calcio. This is a new thing, this final thought. Se is also should ring alarm bells. When you have se, it's more often than not followed by the imperfect subjunctive plus the conditional. So what would you do, and that's expressed in the conditional, if you, and that's in the subjunctive. So what I mean is, se io vincessi la lotteria, comprerei una Ferrari. If I were to win the lottery, and that if clause is expressed in the imperfect subjunctive, what would I do with that? Comprerei una Ferrari, and that's expressed in the conditional, because this can only exist under that condition. Se io studiassi di più, prenderei dei voti alti. If I were to study more, I'd get higher marks. Notice a good way to remember that you need to use the subjunctive is se, and you'll hear the repetition of the sound. Se io vincessi, se io studiassi. So whenever you hear se, you should expect that repetition of a double S, se. Se io vincessi, se io studiassi. And indeed, you have already memorized a sentence like this. When we were doing advice in the conditional, I got you to memorize se io fossi in te, and whatever the condition, the advice was, eviterei I cibi grassi. Fossi, that's just essere, if I were you, in the imperfect subjunctive. And indeed, it's a good idea to, for any tense we do, to memorize one sentence that really shows the use of that tense. So by memorizing this sentence, perhaps you will remember how to use the imperfect subjunctive with if clauses. By memorizing, for example, da bambina giocavo a calcio, you will remember how to use imperfect tense. So it's a good idea to use that strategy to memorize both the function of your tense, so it has to be very clear in the meaning of the sentence, the function of your tense, and how the tense is used within a sentence. Some other examples. Ebony pensa che la classe abbia bisogno di un esempio. Ebony thinks the class needs an example. Noi pensiamo che la scuola sia noiosa. We think school is boring. I miei genitori credono che io non studi. My parents think I don't study. And il padre di Hannah crede che lei studi poco. Hannah's dad thinks she studies too much.